So, meanwhile, ActionSA has vowed that it will not go into any further coalition talks with the DA without Julius Malema's EFF. Mashaba and the EFF shocked many when they helped install DA mayors in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. Now, Tshwane also has a new mayor in the name of Randall Williams, a DA mayor. The DA's Dr Mpho Phalatse won the mayoral chains off the ANC's candidate Mpho Moerane. Phalatse won 144 votes to Moerane's 121, becoming Johannesburg's first woman mayor. Mpho Phalatse, a councillor since 2016 and a mayoral committee member under Herman Mashaba, has a manifesto of critical items that need fixing. She joins us now. A very good evening to you, Dr Phalatse, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So I'd like to know what you're thinking, you're feeling, as you mentioned that you're going through a haze of emotions. But from where you sit, it was obviously not something that you would have done alone without the smaller parties. You didn't have the majority. So how do you feel about that? Are you ambivalent, particularly given what I've just mentioned, the ActionSA leader saying they're not going to have further talks with you unless you bring the EFF into the equation?
Well, I mean, we are humbled, by the opportunity to lead in the economic hub of the country. We don't take that lightly. And I'm personally optimistic about democracy in South Africa if we can have this sort of thing happening in a council such as Johannesburg Metro, that, our democracy is maturing, and that even though we don't look united as political parties, we obviously have a common vision of seeing our cities work and seeing them grow and reversing a lot of the decay that we've seen, particularly in recent years, in the last 2 years, particularly in the city of Johannesburg. In terms of arrangements going forward, in terms of the model of governance that we're going to adopt to make sure that we stabilize council and to make sure that there's continuity and growth, yes, different parties have their own conditions. The Democratic Alliance has its own conditions. We are going to meet, we're going to talk, we're going to find each other. We'll find common ground where there is common ground. Where we disagree, we will debate until we find each other. The most important thing now...
So does it mean there could be a reversal of what John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille both repeatedly said, that they would not repeat the mistakes that they made previously by working with the EFF? Could there be a reversal of that? Is there a change of heart in the offing?
No, definitely that's not what I'm saying. So in 2016, we had a different arrangement with the EFF, which is different from now. We had no arrangement with the EFF going into council yesterday. We still have no arrangement with the EFF. All we know is that the likelihood is that they voted for us. And that even is, we're uncertain. We're only adding up the numbers. And that's what it looks like, and we're following the trend, nationwide trend, where it looks like the EFF was voting with the Democratic Alliance in all the different municipalities. In 2016, we had a voting arrangement with the EFF, which was agreed upon prospectively. This time around, the EFF of its own accord decided unsolicited to give their support to the Democratic Alliance. Those two dynamics are slightly different.
No, I understand that, but what you're saying is that, you're going to talks, and where there's agreement, there's going to be agreement. But take a moment. I'd like you to listen to this. We spoke to Professor Stephen Friedman earlier on. I found his insights on this very important, on what is likely to happen, that if people go into an arrangement like this, acquiring executive power without a formal agreement, that it could be dangerous. Let's take a listen and watch.
Is the EFF committed to supporting a DA government for the next 5 years? Because if it isn't, this whole thing falls apart. Is Action South Africa going to support a DA government for the next 5 years?
So what is the lifespan of this political game that is being played in the opposition bloc? Is it durable? Can it last? Is it sustainable?
No, it's not sustainable, Tsipiso, because the point is that if you haven't, it's not just a technical issue. If you haven't sat down with the party you're voting for and said, what are we going to cooperate on and what are the terms of the cooperation, you're going to fall out with each other. I mean, Julius Malema is quoted as saying he wouldn't ask the DA for anything. But the DA is, in those metros, the DA is dependent on his party's votes for the next 5 years. So at some point, somebody will have to grow up and start being adult and indicating whether they're going to support the DA or not. because if they're not, then this government will fall. And we will land up in this kind of situation that we've been in Nelson Mandela Bay for the last 5 years, where one vote by one party can put the DA in, and then the ANC in, and then the DA back again, etc.
All right, Dr. Phalatse, you've been listening into that, and essentially this is where I was going. I wanted to know, I don't want to be the damp squib in this party, if there is a party, obviously something to celebrate, but these are the realities of it, and I'm sure you've thought about it. Has the DA sat down to talk about it? It's early days, I realize, but where to from now? When you say you're open to talking, under what framework, under what prism?
So yes, the DA is aware, and we are aware of the widespread concern, and it's not misplaced. People want stability, and they want to know, will this last? And it's a very valid concern. We have a job to do as political parties in the Joburg Council, and that is to find each other. I have a job to do as the executive mayor elected, and that is to lead that process of ensuring that political parties find each other. Are we going to find each other 100%? Of course not. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in different political parties. We all hold different ideologies, and we believe in different approaches to solving societal problems. However, there are large areas of overlap, which we can start capitalizing on. If we do a comparative analysis of our manifestos, I can assure you now that we'll find many areas where we can agree and we can start moving. Where we don't agree, we will open up robust debate.
What do you see as the low-hanging fruit at this stage?
Well, I mean, we all agree that the city of Joburg is broken. We all agree that we need to fix basic service delivery first and foremost. I don't think there's any single political party that does not agree on that. And that's an immediate starting point that we can build on. We will, of course, start consulting, and I'm going to lead the consultation process with different political parties to hear from them what it is that they expect from this government in the next 5 years, or what model of governing do they see as adopting collectively, because the concern here is stability, and it's our concern as well. We want to bring stability into council. We don't want a repeat of the last 5 years. And it's going to take us finding each other with the various political parties without compromising on our values and principles. And that's one thing. It's important to have parameters even while you're negotiating. It's very important. And I gave this example that, we worked in 2016 until 2019, we were in government in the city of Johannesburg. There are areas, if we talk about the EFF, for instance, where we agreed. We agreed on extending service hours in our clinics. I was MMC for health, and I took charge of that project. We agreed on rolling out mobile clinic services. However, we didn't agree on land invasions, for instance, and that still has not changed. And we should be comfortable enough to say this we agree with and this we don't agree with, and therefore this is the kind of working relationship we can have. And it may differ from political party to political party, where there's more greater alignment. We can find ourselves in a more formalized coalition. Where there isn't, then we will not be able to enter into that.
I would like you to listen to something else, because it's an interesting launch pad to this, what you've just said, because we spoke to ActionSA's Herman Mashaba earlier on. When you talk about ideological differences, and you may disagree, but this is how he views the DA as a party that is not interested in delivering to the majority or the poor. Let's listen to what he says, and it's basically around why they voted you in and what they expect you to do.
So one thing that is a fact as well is that DA on their own, unfortunately, poor communities are not part of their agenda. So for us, they must never, ever have any impression that our vote was a gift to them. Absolutely, we are not unapologetic about this. We gave them this vote, firstly, to remove the ANC, to save our country from the ANC. Secondly, we are saying to the DA, if you're going to govern and govern with us, we are going to make sure that you provide services to all South Africans, not only those that voted for you.
I'd imagine in the main you'd be in agreement on the need to deliver to the poor, the disenfranchised, but it's also the approach, isn't it, and how you package that policy. It would seem there's differences. There's no convergence from what ActionSA's Herman Mashaba says about your approach as a DA.
Well, the only difference that I'm aware of between the approach that Mr. Mashaba took when he was mayor and the approach that the DA at the time wanted to take, and that would still be the DA approach, is that we don't believe that we should focus on one constituency and ignore or neglect the needs of another. So what happened between 2016 and 2019 is that we saw an overemphasis on developing poorer areas, which we agree with, but a neglect of rate-paying areas, which is not sustainable in the long term, because you need revenue. You need to collect revenue in order to run the city. You need all residents of the city to be serviced, to feel part of the city, and to contribute towards the development of the city without feeling like they're being exploited or abused, which we've seen or heard from a lot of our ratepayers with what happened between 2016 and 2019, where people were paying tens of thousands of rands in some instances and not getting value for money because of this approach.
I need to ask, you can complete your train of thought?
We believe as a Democratic Alliance in a more balanced approach. We believe that the rich need the poor and the poor need the rich. We don't believe that it's an either or. We believe that we can serve the poor while at the same time maintaining our developed areas. We don't have to choose as a government. All constituents are important and we need to represent all of them.
As a final question, you were the MMC for Health, and South Africa entering possibly into the fourth wave of COVID-19, and we know corruption, especially with regards to PPE, has become a major issue in Johannesburg. What are your plans to maintain transparency while increasing access to health in the city?
Well, I mean, one of the things we saw happening in the city of Cape Town, for instance, which did not happen in Johannesburg, is transparency with who got allocated contracts, for instance, to roll out certain services and supply goods even during the lockdown. We need to adopt what Cape Town is doing. It works. With transparency, you really dissuade people from corrupt behavior. And we just need to bring that into Johannesburg, and hopefully we'll prevent a lot of that. We need to exercise greater oversight and again, look at the broader mandate of rooting out this culture of corruption systematically and ensuring there's a system of checks and balances, within the various departments to ensure that it's difficult to participate in corruption, and that if you do, then you will be caught out. And also capacitating our group forensic investigation services unit to make sure that they're able to catch out people that are involved in corruption. So we will be exercising greater oversight. In terms of health care, it's just making sure that all our facilities are capacitated to render services to patients. We will be working with Gauteng Health. As you know, health is the provincial mandate handed down to the municipality. We work through the district health system model where we co-plan and co-manage, and that's the approach that we will be taking. I'll be looking at gaps. I had COVID in July, and I already had concerns about, some of the protocols that I'm seeing in public service as opposed to private care. I do believe that we can avert a lot of the deaths that happened. A good example is, I was told by my doctor to go and take bloods on day 6. When I got to a government clinic, they didn't know about that protocol. They were not taking bloods, checking for clots, for instance. And we know that a lot of people died from coagulation, and those deaths could have been averted. So we will be looking at protocols, and I will be working closely with Gauteng Health to look at what else we can do to avert deaths going forward.
Thank you for taking the time to engage us. Congratulations once again, Johannesburg's first female mayor, Dr Mpho Phalatse of the DA. She was voted in yesterday with 144 to the ANC's 120.